just get complaints from the users that have to work there all day. So anything that can charge many of these things at one time is a great advantage. As has already been said, the new models are far better in terms of infection control than the previous models. The C5 is not as good as some of these other ones that are coming along in that it does have a fan, but it's still a hell of a lot better than anything else that we've had before. Tether is important to us. It's something that it's amazing how much time and effort we've spent on earlier models tying pens onto units. And if you don't tie pens onto units, then as soon as it comes free, the next doctor that comes along, without thinking, will use it and will put the pen in their top pocket and will go. And that device is then useless until somebody finds another pen. And some of these pens used to cost £60 a go, so it was a non-trivial loss. So tying something, it might seem stupid, but we spent months tying these things on with fishing line, with string, with everything. It's got to be something that you can use that is cleanable. So fishing line is good, but you try tying a knot in fishing line. So something that works as a strong tether is a definite positive advantage. It's the first one we've seen that's got a handle, and that again is a positive advantage. It's very easy to drop these things if you're in a rush, and a handle is definitely seen by the staff as being a great advantage. The barcode scanner is good for us. We've got plans to use that. The RFID scanner, no plans at the moment, but maybe we'll get to that later. In terms of experience, and this isn't anything to do with the C5, this is just experience of mobile computers over the last 10 years. The first thing is the biggest issue that comes as a great surprise to everybody, that they don't bounce and the batteries don't have infinite life. And it's a complete mystery to us why everybody in a trust can look after their mobile phones, keep them charged, do everything right with them, but you give them one of these devices, can they keep it charged? No way. And it's a real issue. We get people ringing up saying, all our devices are flat, can we have some more? Words fail us at that point in terms of what do you do to try and train people. But it's a real issue that has to be addressed somehow, and I can't say we found the answer to it, but flat batteries are an issue. Basically, personal ownership of the device, that can really only be the explanation between why people can manage their mobiles but can't manage these things, is that they're not theirs and they don't care about them in the same way. I'm told that the problem is not specific to computers. Pumps, infusion pumps, I'm told it's the same problem. There's a cupboard full, if one breaks, you put it back in the cupboard and you get another one out and you use that one. Only when the cupboard is full of broken pumps does anybody actually do anything about it. There's two ladies over here that are smiling at this point, so it's obviously not common to my hospital at this time. And as I said, stylus being detached and getting lost is a major problem. It makes this thing completely useless for such a little issue. Another one, units moving between wards is a problem that we have sometimes. Junior doctors pick one up, use it, and then casually walk down the corridor to their next, if they're doing a load of outlying patients, they'll wander off, which is fine, but then you suddenly find one ward's got one where it should have 5 devices and another ward's got 10 at the other end of the corridor. Again, things like that have to be managed. Infection control, I think we're all aware of the issues there. Space, as I've said, definite problem, space. And critical care units, they don't have desks. If you're going to put one at the end of each bed, there isn't some way to put it down on. So in those areas, we've had to build effectively adapted drip stands in order to have something that a standing nurse at the bottom of a bed can use one of these terminals at a sensible ergonomic height and have them powered up and everything else. And interestingly, making those things, the cost of these stands was comparable to the cost of the devices nearly in terms of getting metalwork made and things to do these. The things that you've got there are definitely an advantage in that respect. As I've said, we're using these things for drug rounds, and in that respect, the nurses go round from bed to bed with a drug trolley and with one of these devices. The drug trolley in the UK was designed, I think, in about the 1940s or the 1950s and has changed little since. It's different sizes, but they're all basically the same, and they're completely unsuitable to this kind of usage. The shelf is down here somewhere. It's a tiny little fold-out flap. So nurses complain about bad backs quite regularly on these things. And again, these things having rubber on the back is a great advantage, because as they drag them from one side room to another one, they sail through the door with great aplomb. Unfortunately, the handheld keeps going in the same direction and skates across the floor, so again, they don't balance. So. Repairs and lifetime issues, they're not as reliable as a desktop PC, because they go through so much more. They're handled, they're picked up, put down, not necessarily very gently. So generally speaking, they do break down more, so repairs and fast turnaround on repairs is important. And because they have so much handling, I don't think you could ever claim that they would last the same sort of time spans that they will, that a desktop PC will last. So in terms of planning for the life cycle, then don't assume a desktop PC kind of usage. In terms of the applications that you run on these things, I think it's a dangerous assumption if you think that any Windows-based application will run well on a stylus-based PC. I think you need to look quite critically at the application and how it's going to be used, how often text is input and things of that sort, before you just assume that they will work. Certainly in terms of the application that we're running on it, it's been developed specifically to minimize text input as much as possible, and use obviously drop-downs and pitch lists and everything else that you can do within Windows. But equally important, I think it's important, if possible, to have the application be aware of the fact that it's running on a handheld rather than on a desktop, so that when you go into a field which requires input, you get a keyboard appearing automatically. You don't have to go somewhere and click on it in order to call up a keyboard and then use it and then close it back down again. If the application knows that it's there, it can just automatically fire up a keyboard, and it doesn't need to be a QWERTY keyboard. If it's a numeric field, it can be a numeric keyboard, and then take it away as soon as you move on to a different field that doesn't need the keyboard. Calibration is something that nobody talks about, but it's well worth having a critical look at. Calibration is the thing that says that when you point into the four corners of the screen, the point that you're pointing at and the point that the system thinks you're pointing at are the same. When the calibration goes off, you can sometimes find that you point at one point on the screen and the little cursor on the screen is perhaps half a centimetre away from that, particularly in the corners. And the problem that gives rise to is users ring up saying, my terminal doesn't work. And when you go across and find out what they're complaining about on their terminal, what they're actually finding is they're pushing their stylus into a radio button, but the little cursor is outside the radio button, and they swear they're doing the right thing, which they are. But the system thinks they are clicking just outside the box and is therefore ignoring it. So calibration, and good constant calibration, is vital.